So I will kind of preface this by saying that within our company and our team, our primary focus and mission is on helping small businesses thrive and being able to have a holistic approach to how they operate their businesses. So the three areas that we focus on are around the financial management, but also marketing and strategic planning. So we really like to say, how are our clients not only finding and engaging with the right audience, how are they able to understand and use their numbers to their advantage, but then also having actionable, implementable plans for growth and getting to the next step. Because I feel like all of those are crucial aspects of running and operating a successful business. And it's very easy, especially as small business owners or solopreneurs, to get hung up in each of those spaces.
Hey, I'm Teen Zekas.
And hey, I'm Ilika Follette. We are business owners and moms with corporate backgrounds, and we are all about getting Black women paid in both corporate and business.
And you're listening to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast.
Let's go.
Hello, welcome to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast. I am Teen Zekas, and unfortunately, my co-host Ilika was not able to join today for the recording, but we're not going to leave you hanging. Today is a guest episode. I am so stinking excited for this guest we have on for you. We are going to be talking all about financial literacy for business owners. So I would love to introduce you to our guest, Leandra Nisbet. Leandra Nisbet is the founder and owner of Stingray Advisory Group and a 2-time Top Women-Owned Business Award recipient. Her focus is helping small business owners, course creators, and entrepreneurs break free from overwhelmed and time-crunched so they can reclaim their time and get back to what they love. Leandra's superpower is making complex, daunting, but essential business operations approachable, actionable, and manageable. She earned her BBA and MBA from Davenport University and brings over 15 years of experience in leadership, sales, and marketing into her role as a business advisor and growth strategist. Leandra is actively involved in the community, serving on boards, councils, and committees, and she is honored to be a 40 Under 40 award recipient and a Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Scholar. So without further ado, I would love to invite Miss Leandra to join us. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, we are so excited to have you. Thank you for agreeing to be on the show. I have learned so much from you personally. I am a solopreneur, and even though I have a math background, there is something about getting into the books that that just feels daunting. And I mean, maybe it's because those numbers aren't what I want them to be, certainly at the beginning, right? So I'm so excited to have you. I think what you do is so important. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So I'd love to get into maybe just initially, how and why you got into this work.
Sure. So it's kind of a funny story. I was originally planning this goes way back, but when I was in high school, and planning for college and what was next for me, my plans had been to open my own advertising firm. So I had a plan for going to college, and I knew what I wanted to do, like when I was all grown up and all the things.
Yeah.
And I had accepted a job in a financial services company. And it started out as a part-time position, and I got promoted and moved into other roles, and things just changed from where they started, which it was a well-paying job that worked around my schedule, was flexible. I liked who I was working with and my team, and those things, and became a full-time job that I was expected to go to and be there all the time and all the regular adult stuff. And then it was like, interesting. Like, I don't know what had really happened during that shift because it had made me kind of lose my perspective on what my goals and plans had been. And so the culture of that company really shifted from when I had started to at the point that I was at. And so I was really assessing what was next for me and where I was going to go. And I was having coffee with one of my mentors, and he asked me, because I'd been telling him about different roles I was looking at internally within that organization and other jobs I was thinking about applying for. And he's like, have you thought about owning your own business? And I laughed. And the reason I laughed wasn't because I thought the idea was ridiculous. It was because it immediately in that moment made me sit back and think, like, what happened to that girl and the plans that I had for myself? Because I had gotten so sidetracked with everything else that had happened over the last, 3-4 years, whatever it was at that point, that I was like, oh yeah. Like, thanks for reminding me of what I had really set out to do. I had gotten so sucked up into these other things. And so it made me, take a step back. And I really was like, well, I don't need to apply for the next job. I don't need to apply for the next role. Let me think about what I can create for myself. And so to the drawing board to think about, what are my skills and talents and interests? What can I bring from roles I've had in school and the interest that I have to create a company and something that I can be proud of and a culture that is more in line with my values. So really that was it. And then I started, talking to people about my idea and sharing, like, hey, does this sound of interest to you? Do you know people that could use this? Like, am I on the right path here? And just forming it into a fully fledged company and business. And here we are.
Oh my goodness. I love so many things about your story. And I think the thing that stuck out to me the most was when you acknowledged that even though things had been a good fit at one point, the culture of the company can shift, your experience of the role can shift, right? That it's so easy to sit in a place and say, well, this has been good. Why am I ungrateful, or why am I not feeling whatever? And just acknowledging, like, the situation changed, you changed, the company changed, and then saying, like, well, let me reassess. I love that. And the importance of talking with other people about it, right? If we're just sitting in our own thoughts, it's very easy to miss something. And it's so often someone else who can remind us of who we are and what we value. I love all those different aspects of your story. So I wanted to highlight those for our listeners, because those are so crucial in terms of those pivot points in our careers.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and so I'd love to get into, what you do around financial literacy for, especially small business owners, coaches, entrepreneurs. So, what's the kind of work that you do around financial literacy?
Sure. So I will kind of preface this by saying that within our company and our team, our primary focus and mission is on helping small businesses thrive and being able to have a holistic approach to how they operate their businesses. So the 3 areas that we focus on are around the financial management, but also marketing and strategic planning. So we really like to say, how are our clients not only finding and engaging with the right audience, how are they able to understand and use their numbers to their advantage, but then also having actionable, implementable plans for growth and getting to the next step. Because I feel like all of those are crucial aspects of running and operating a successful business. And it's very easy, especially as small business owners or solopreneurs, to get hung up in each of those spaces. It's either you kind of double down on one idea and then that's all that we're seeing, or we don't have an understanding of our numbers. So we just kind of put blinders onto that part of it and move on to something else. And it's like the shiny object syndrome. So with regards to empowering small businesses around their numbers, I think there's so much power in knowledge. And it's one of those things where if you can improve your relationship with your numbers and not let them be daunting and overwhelming,
right,
it can really shape the trajectory of your business. So what we like to do is really educate and empower our clients so that they can have a better understanding of what the numbers are telling them. Having clarity around how they can use their numbers to make decisions in their business and how they can keep up with their numbers on a regular and consistent basis so that it's not really just that, tax time crunch of, well, I need these because my employee needs them. And these reports are things I'm supposed to have. And let me just, cobble some things together and send over this spreadsheet. That is actually something that's top of mind all the time, and that you're figuring out how to incorporate that into your, regular routine business operations so that it's something you're in control of, not something that's controlling you.
Oh, I love that. And I'd love to dig more into that, but I want to back up for one moment, because when you mentioned the holistic approach you take with your clients and really zooming out and addressing, things from multiple angles, I just want to highlight that again for our listeners, especially entrepreneurs. The solution that you offer, the difference between, someone who's out here, giving one little thing and someone who is successful is often that full solution, right? That holistic approach, right? To say like, well, let's look at all of these different aspects and how they play together. And so I love that you've taken that approach. And I just wanted to emphasize that for folks so that, people who are maybe forming a business strategy or who are thinking about expanding can start to think about, well, what's the full solution to the transformation I'm trying to create for folks. But getting more into it, it sounds like you're really helping folks not just build confidence, but really use, when you mentioned like using the numbers to drive decision making. Can you give an example of like what that can look like?
Oh, absolutely. So one example would be thinking about your product or service offerings. It's really common to have ideas for what you want to offer. So for example, for some of our digital creators or online business owners, we have courses, we have content, we have resources, and we have a great idea. So we're pushing out these offers. But if you don't have a keen understanding of your numbers, you might get lost just by seeing it's bringing in revenue, you're getting sales, you're getting money coming in the door, but you don't see the full picture. So you might actually see on paper, oh yeah, offer XYZ is bringing in a lot of revenue. But if you're not actually doing the math and looking at what's going into that, you might not be factoring in the advertising spend that you had for that offer, the graphic designer that you hired, your virtual assistant or online business manager that you brought on to help support you with getting that off the ground, the software platform that you're using to, actually distribute your offers, all of those other things, even your own time for that matter. So once you actually break it down, you might see like that you're actually breaking even, or even worse, actually losing money on an offer. So that's why we really encourage clients, especially, even early stage or existing clients, to be detailed when you're keeping track of your numbers. So instead of just having that one lump sum line item for sales or revenue, income, break it down. Have that by per product, per service, per offer that you have. So maybe again, in this online example, maybe you have a digital course that you're selling. Maybe you also have, one-on-one coaching and consulting that you do, and you have, affiliate income, those things. Put those as separate things that you're able to track within your business. So then you can start to have a better understanding of what's not only just bringing in money to your business, but then you can also, on the flip side of that, be tracking the corresponding expenses related to those offers. So you can start to see what's actually bringing in profit for you, and maybe where some of those stragglers are that you need to reassess. Maybe you're looking at, going back to the decisions, your pricing strategy, cutting expenses, or eliminating an offer altogether if you've made some of these tweaks and pivots and it's still not, bringing in, making it a profitable offer.
Oh yeah, that is that is such a good point about. Oh, excuse me. That's such a good point about, how much it took to deliver that offer or to advertise for that offer, right? So how much you're spending before you're getting the revenue is such a. It's so easy to overlook because you're like, oh, you see these dollars coming in, right? But, an example for me is, I published a book last year and I'm selling it on Amazon, and I was running Amazon ads, and they love to report out to you the total sales. And that number is not your revenue. That number is, how many dollars people put into Amazon. And so you need to then do the math and say, well, what was my revenue? What were my royalties? Mm-hmm. And I was spending more on ads than I was getting in royalties. So I was paying Amazon for the privilege of advertising my book, right? Like, and that just didn't make any sense. So I ended up, I pulled my ads, and, now the book is still selling. It's not selling as much as it was with ads, but I'm not paying every time somebody clicks on it. And I remember specifically, I had to tell my mom, because she was going in every day to be like, oh, there's a new review and there's whatever. And I had to train her on like, do not click where it says sponsored. I don't want to be paying for you to you to be looking at my book every day. But so it is so important to think about, like what is the spend in relation to what you're getting back. I think that's so crucial.
That's a great example. So thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's exactly the type of thing that I'm talking about. It's very easy if you're just saying, ooh, I'm in my email and I just got that notification for PayPal or from Stripe, and the money's coming in. But if you're not taking that next step to say, well, what did that actually cost me to generate? Yeah. It's hard to make really impactful decisions because you don't know if you need to change your pricing or adjust anything because you're not seeing the full picture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that you also work with folks on mindset. Obviously, when people think about the numbers, it's like, there can be a lot of just, oh, math is scary, or numbers are very self-explanatory. It's just, this number. But I'm wondering kind of what goes into the mindset piece in terms of, how entrepreneurs can use that to maybe just improve their relationship with those numbers.
Yeah. So I think mindset is incredibly important. As with anything, I mean, think about if you're trying to start a new, workout routine or create a new habit of some kind. If you're already apprehensive going into it, more likely than not, it's going to either be incredibly difficult to keep up with, or you're just going to give up on it at some point because it's overwhelming. And so I think about that in the same type of respect when you're thinking about getting started with keeping up with your numbers. You have to think about and acknowledge where you're coming from, what headspace you're in. What is your current relationship like with your numbers? Is it something that you're comfortable with? Is it something that you've never really talked to people about or even really put a lot of time and effort and energy toward yourself? Have you had financial management struggles in the past that maybe are kind of lingering and creating kind of a cloud over you moving forward, and you feel like you're still stuck in that space or as that person in time from a decade ago? All of those things need to be acknowledged to help you be able to move forward and past that. So I think it's very important to be able to step back and really gain clarity about where you are on your journey, and understand that it can change. If you had credit problems or debt or bankruptcy in the past, or if you had late payments, or, you had creditors calling you, or whatever it might have been, or if you applied for that business loan and you got turned down 10 times, that was then. So who are you now, and how are you going to make things different as you move forward? Because those are still things in your control. Having bad credit in the past doesn't mean that you need to have bad credit today. You can learn from that experience and say, well, now I know that I want to set up my bill payments on auto pay. And now I know that if there is something I'm running into as an issue, I'm going to proactively call and reach out to that company or whatever it is. And, I didn't get that loan, but they explained why. And now I know I just need to have stronger financial statements and more time in my business because I'm still relatively new. While it's not easy, there are things that you can learn from all of these situations, and even sometimes the mindset can be because of good things that have happened in the past. And now it's created kind of a scarcity mindset in people to say like, well, I'm never going to have that much money again, or I don't know if I can accomplish that level of success again, or if I can, keep up with what I did before. So it can be both sides of the coin, in my opinion. But being able to just sit and acknowledge where you're coming from, I think is incredibly empowering. And so, for example, we've actually created a resource specifically around like empowering people around their numbers and mindset activities and things that you can do to make this top of mind and to actually identify where you're at and where you want to be and what you need to do to get there. And even in we have a signature group coaching program. And the very first step that we take within that is around a self-assessment so that people can start to understand, where am I now? What are some of my roadblocks and challenges? And what's working well for me? What do I really like about my relationship with my numbers, or how things are going for me and where I'm at on this journey? Because I think it's very important to acknowledge both sides of that so that you can know how to move forward confidently.
Oh my goodness, you covered so many poignant things here. I want to go back to what you were saying about your past and learning from those things. I mean, so often here on the podcast we talk about growth mindset and how so many women I'm talking to, especially around like salary negotiation and things, will say, "Oh, I should have," or "I wish I had," or and it's like, hey, this is not about what happened in the past. Like, we can't do anything about that. This is about now I know, how am I going to move forward differently? And a friend of mine, her name is Shahara Wooten. She's a financial advisor. And she has a book. I think it's called In the Meantime, Your Financial Story. And she talks about kind of your initial experiences with money and how they shape your view, right? So if you grew up poor and, food insecure, that has a huge impact on, your risk tolerance now or things. Or if you grew up, not thinking about money at all, or you don't even remember, having conversations about money, right? That gives you a whole different perspective. So it's so cool that you help folks kind of evaluate, right? Like, where am I? What is my current mindset around money? And, how can I use things from the past to learn and grow and move forward? The other piece I wanted to address was your resource around mindset, because I actually have used your I think it was like a guidebook and oh my goodness, I mean, life-changing. I mean,
Thank you.
I just I know that you're not here necessarily to promote your stuff, but I'm going to put a link in the show notes for that resource, because it was huge for me and for my business, just in terms of kind of addressing that fear head on. You talked about the scarcity mindset that can come from doing well. So many of our listeners are, working full time and they're trying to build out maybe a side business. And the question is, how can I have that business replace my current salary, right? And that's where that scarcity comes in, right? I got the steady paycheck, I got benefits, what have you. And oh my goodness, it's so daunting that, I'll be able to build this business to the point where it can replace that. And that's where we get the golden handcuffs, right? So like for me, I'm in software engineering, and those salaries, it's hard to walk away from, right? So you just hit the nail on the head in so many ways in terms of, the things you address with folks. So I'm so thrilled that you're working with people on this. I'm thinking of, for anyone who's watching or listening, who's wondering like, well, how do I start? Like, how do I start like using my numbers to like make impactful decisions, or how do I even set up the processes to be regularly addressing my numbers, right? Like I'm every, end of March, oh no, I got to get my taxes in, right? I gotta, make this spreadsheet with my P&L, right? Like, how do you advise folks get started on kind of building the systems to be regularly looking at their numbers and using those to make business decisions?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So as with any of the strategies that we're working with our clients on, my first recommendation is to start small and to see what you can actually commit to. Because if you go into it where it's an all out, like I have a 12-step process and I'm doing all of these things every other day, it's going to be daunting and it's going to be hard, and you're probably not going to stick with it. So think about what is a small step that you can take today to get started. And so, for example, that might be determining, how do you want to keep track of your numbers? I'm a certified QuickBooks Online Pro advisor. We support clients with other bookkeeping platforms as well. That said, my recommendation isn't always to jump into an accounting platform, because for some people, that's just an extra step and they're not going to keep up with it. There might be a learning curve with the tech itself. So maybe you're just not a techie person. It's one more platform to log into. You might just not make that part of your habits and routines. So then it quickly becomes out of sight, out of mind. So maybe the answer for you is to use Google Sheets, to use a spreadsheet, to use Excel. I won't say that it can never work. It certainly can. The benefit of platforms is that it can help with streamlining your processes and make things more automated and give you a little bit more insight. But you can certainly do these things, technically even on paper, if you're going to realistically commit to it. So I would say determine how you will track your numbers can be an easy first step, and then commit to it. From there, you can continue looking at incremental steps that you can take. I always encourage people, make a date with your numbers. That might sound silly, but I feel like we're all so busy. We have so many things going on. I know for me, if it's not on my calendar, it's not going to happen. Like if it's lost in my email, if it's written on a sticky note, if it's, on the back of an envelope somewhere, that's going to happen when it pops into my head again. Or I'm like, oh yeah, I think I was supposed to do something. Like, what was that? But if it's on my calendar, or if it's in my project management tool, then it's going to happen. So think about setting aside time to actually check in with your numbers. And so I don't want people to immediately cringe when I say that and say like, oh, that already sounds like too much. This can look like different things for different people. So for example, you might say, okay, on Fridays at 9 to 9:30, I am going to just look at my bank account or my business credit card, see where I've been spending, see how much is in my accounts. Just start thinking, what expenses do I have coming up next week? Am I good to cover them? It's starting to build that relationship with your numbers. You're starting to understand what's regularly happening within your business. You're going to be able to start to see it in time, what looks off. You might start to be proactive with making decisions about managing your money coming in, which we call your cash flow, to say like, uh-oh, it looks like I'm actually going to be short by the end of the month. Like, what do I need to do now to take care of that proactively? So putting something on the calendar is also very helpful. So that could be a very nice step too. If you're not, like, I don't really want to look into my bank account. Maybe it's saying I'm going to check my spreadsheet, or if I have an accounting platform, I'm going to log into it and just, get a sense of what's going on in there. So those things can look different for different people, or even at different times. Maybe the first week of the month you're going in to do one thing, and then the next week you're doing a different activity. You're checking your open invoices, seeing who owes you money. You're looking, there's a number of things that you can do when it comes to keeping up with your numbers. But I would just encourage people to start small, think of what you can commit to today that will be impactful and help start moving you forward, and then actually commit to taking action.
Oh, those are such great tips. And as you were talking about it, I was picturing the, what is it called? The couch to 5K. I know people do where it's like, you are not necessarily a runner, but you want to start running. And so the program is designed to start small, right? It starts with, actually we're going to do this much walking in between, and we're going to, you build up to it. And that was exactly what I was picturing when you were talking about starting small with, something that's manageable to you, but that can be impactful, right? 30 minutes a week. I think most of us could do 30 minutes a week on, right? I just want to check and see that these transactions got categorized correctly.
Yes.
Right? That is a totally reasonable task. And for me, maybe it's because I'm a math nerd, but when you said date with your numbers, I was like, oh, that's I'm like, oh, I get a date. Like,
yeah, exactly.
And even, so I follow someone, her name is Bola Shokumbi, and she does Clever Girl Finance. I love her. And she talks about even like you could name your budget something that is like fun, right? It doesn't have to be if the name budget upsets you, it could be like, I'm the CEO of my spending or whatever, it's it's the financial planning dream plan or whatever, like having some fun name. So to me, like a date with your numbers, I'm like, oh, that sounds great. I'll get some, maybe I'll get some special tea, and I'll get like ways to make it fun while you're going in, and again, starting small and just getting used to the regular process of being in there and seeing how money's moving back and forth.
Yeah. And I love that you shared that. And that is one thing I'll add. Think about ways to make it fun. So one of the things, just in general, there's a practice called habit stacking. So basically what you do is you can take habits and stack them together so that you can encourage yourself to do something. So for example, like this, if it's the date with your numbers on Friday morning, to your point, yes, maybe that's when you're also going to treat yourself to your favorite, like Frappuccino or something that you wouldn't normally do, or, you're going to make have your instant oats or something at that time. So you're doing something else that's exciting or more fun to you, or like a reward or treat to yourself, while you're then just putting in this date with your numbers at the same time. So it's also going to entice you to still do it, because you're like, it's kind of like when you're going to the gym and you have, if your best friend's going with you, you're not going to bail on her. You're going to go and stick it through. And then if you guys are going to go have lunch afterward, then it's a fun thing where you're just sticking in the workout in between. So you could do something similar with this too.
Yeah. And when you talk about habit stacking, to me, what I'm hearing also is, now if I do start small, right? And now once I've built that habit of every week I go in and, I categorize the transactions, once that is a habit, now maybe I can say, okay, well, how about on Fridays when I'm doing that, now I also go check my invoices, or now I also go look at my, my ad spend on these accounts or what have you. And that's a really seamless way to start building on that, so that you are becoming more and more invested in, being on top of your finances.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Oh, I love that so much. I'm wondering if there is anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to make sure you mentioned, or, any last minute tips for our listeners, that we didn't cover?
I would say a final tip could be not to be overwhelmed by what everybody else is doing, which I think is a general tip anytime. But when it comes to your numbers, it can be so common to hear about, I'm using QuickBooks for this, and I'm using this platform for that, and I'm, keeping up with this over here, and all of the things, or how much people are spending in other spaces, how much they're putting into ads, or hiring this new person. If you're not at that stage, you don't need to get sucked in and distracted by those things. So think about what you can commit to, what's going to work for you at your current stage of business. And then I will also challenge you, however, to think proactively about what's next, because sometimes it's easier to reach your point B if you're thinking about it when you're only at point A, because you're actively working towards that, or your mind is helping you get closer to that next goal. Because for example, I want to just start with Google Sheets now. That's going to be an easy entry point. It'll be simple for me to capture my information. I'm in Google all the time anyway. That's approachable. But I know by next year, before tax time, I want to be into an accounting platform, because I want this process to be easier for me. So you're going to be thinking about, well, what could I be doing? How can I move toward that? Is it because I need to save the money to have the expense of that, because you want to reach out to somebody and ask how you can get help with it? All of those things you can be doing in the interim, even if you're not there today. So think about where you are now, and kind of the roadmap of where you want to get, so that you can be making progress as you're moving forward in the way that works best for you.
Oh my goodness. So well said. We have a recurring theme, of, trying not to compare ourselves to others. But I love what you said about really figuring out, okay, well, what is my next goal? What is the thing I'm going to try to get to? And how can I be taking intentional steps toward that, in the process? I love it. Leandra, thank you so much. This has been, I'm sitting here like all the different gems I'm collecting from what you're saying have been fantastic. I'm wondering, how folks who are watching or listening can get in touch with you. How can folks, follow you or learn more from you?
Sure. I'd be happy to share some links for our social media. My personal, I'm very active on Instagram. That's my favorite social media platform. And our company, our team is very active online as well. So I'm happy to share those for the show notes. I would encourage everyone to join us inside my private Facebook group, Small Business Financial Freedom Fundamentals. And inside that group and community, we're focusing on all things business strategy and growth. So providing actionable tips and insights for keeping up with your numbers, being able to look at cost-effective marketing and outreach strategies. We're doing, Facebook Live, myself and other team members, so you can connect and engage with us directly, and get insights on resources and ideas for next steps, and get your specific questions answered. So I think that would be a great way to connect.
Oh, fantastic. I love so much that you that you offer this community where you have free resources. So we will absolutely be putting the link to the Facebook group in the show notes. And folks, please follow Leandra on Instagram. And we're so excited that you were able to share your time with us and your expertise with our audience today. So thank you again.
You're very welcome. Very happy to be here and happy to share.
All right. Well, that is going to be it for us today, and we will see you in the next episode. Hey, thanks for listening to the Getting Black Women Paid podcast. If you want to hear more episodes like this one, subscribe wherever you're listening now.
And if you loved what you heard, be sure to leave us a review. And make sure you share the podcast with incredible Black women in your life so we can continue getting Black women paid.
All right. We'll see you in the next one.